Whispers of the Tide. Chapter 1. The Silent Library of Memory. In the quiet coastal town of Eldridge Bay, where the sea whispered secrets to the jagged cliffs and the wind carried the faint scent of salt and forgotten dreams, lived Harold Finley. At 67, Harold was a man shaped by the spines of books and the soft hush of library aisles. He had retired 5 years ago, after 40 dedicated to curating knowledge in the town's modest public library, a place where stories bloomed like wildflowers in the cracks of everyday life. Now, his days unfolded in a small cottage overlooking the bay, its walls lined with shelves groaning under the weight of his personal collection. Dog-eared classics, yellowed poetry volumes, and biographies of lives more adventurous than his own. Harold's wife, Eleanor, had passed a decade earlier, taken by a swift illness that left him adrift in a sea of solitude. They had shared a gentle love, built on quiet evenings reading aloud and walks along the shore. Her absence was a hollow ache, not sharp anymore, but persistent like the fog that rolled in each morning. He had learned to navigate it, finding solace in routines, brewing tea at dawn, tending to his modest garden, and watching the waves crash with rhythmic indifference. But lately, a new current stirred within him, unbidden and unwelcome in its intensity. It centered on Clara Voss, his neighbor of 3 years. Clara, at 50, was a whirlwind of color and vitality, an artist who painted seascapes that captured the town's moody essence. Her cottage, adjacent to his, was a riot of easels, canvases, and half-finished sculptures, spilling out onto her porch like an extension of her exuberant soul. She had moved to Eldridge Bay after a divorce, seeking inspiration in the isolation, and Harold had been the first to welcome her with a basket of fresh scones and a recommendation for the best local history books. To Clara, Harold was a kind friend, a mentor of sorts. She often sought his advice on literature to fuel her creativity, borrowing volumes from his shelves and returning them with notes scribbled in the margins. Her thoughts on symbolism or character arcs. "You're like a walking encyclopedia, Harold," she'd say with a laugh, her eyes sparkling like sunlight on water. "What would I do without your wisdom?" Harold would smile, nod, and retreat to his chair by the window, where he could watch her from afar as she painted on the beach, her hair whipping in the breeze. In those moments, his heart twisted with a longing he dared not name aloud. Why now? He wondered in the quiet of his mind. At this age, when the body betrays and the mirror reflects a stranger, gray hair thinning, lines etched deep from years of squinting at fine print. She sees me as a relic, a comfortable old book to consult, not a story to live. Loneliness had become his companion, but this unrequited affection sharpened it into something poignant, almost poetic. He imagined confessing, the words tumbling out like misplaced bookmarks, but the thought dissolved into fear. What dignity remained in his twilight years would shatter if she recoiled, or worse, pitied him. So he buried it deep, like a letter never sent, and carried on with the small rituals that bridged their worlds. Chapter 2. Brushes and Borrowed Words. One crisp autumn morning, as the leaves turned to shades of amber and rust, Clara knocked on Harold's door. She held a canvas under her arm, wrapped in cloth, her cheeks flushed from the chill wind. "Harold, I need your expert opinion," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Her way bold and unapologetic. "I've been working on this piece inspired by that Shelley poem you lent me, Ode to the West Wind. But something's missing. The emotion, perhaps." He led her to the living room, where sunlight filtered through lace curtains Eleanor had sewn decades ago. As Clara unveiled the painting, a tumultuous sea under a stormy sky, with hints of golden light breaking through, Harold felt a surge in his chest. It mirrored his inner turmoil, the chaos of unspoken love amid the calm facade of age. "It's magnificent," he murmured, tracing the brushstrokes with his eyes. "The wind seems alive, carrying away the old to make way for the new. Shelley would approve." Clara beamed, but her gaze drifted to the window, thoughtful. "You know, Harold, you've got such a way with words. Ever think about writing your own stories? After all those years in the library, you must have a novel in you." He chuckled softly, masking the pang. "If only she knew the story unfolding in my heart, one of a fool chasing shadows. Ah, Clara, I'm too old for new beginnings. My tales are all borrowed from others. Nonsense, she retorted, playfully nudging his arm. Age is just a number. Look at me, 50 and starting over. Painting like my life depends on it. She paused, her expression softening. You've been such a rock since I moved here. After my divorce. Well, it's nice to have a friend who listens without judging. Friend. The word landed like a gentle wave, eroding his illusions. As she left, promising to bring him fresh-baked muffins in return, Harold sank into his armchair. Loneliness is not the absence of company, he reflected, but the presence of unspoken truths. He thought of Eleanor, how their love had been steady like the tide's ebb and flow. This feeling for Clara was a storm, beautiful, destructive, and fleeting. That evening he walked along the beach, the sand cool beneath his feet. A seagull cried overhead, and he recalled a line from a forgotten poem. The heart that loves in silence bears the heaviest load. Aging had taught him acceptance. The body slowed, ambitions faded, but dignity remained in quiet endurance. Yet in the fading light, a whisper of hope stirred. Perhaps meaning lay not in possession, but in the act of feeling deeply, even if unreturned. Chapter 3. The Unsent Letter. Winter descended on Eldridge Bay with a hush, blanketing the town in soft snow that muffled the world's edges. Harold's garden slept under a white veil, and he spent more time indoors, rereading old favorites by the fire. Clara's visits grew frequent. She complained of artist's block, seeking his counsel on everything from color theory to existential musings. One afternoon, as snowflakes danced outside, she arrived with a sketchbook. Harold, help me brainstorm. I want to capture resilience, the way people rebuild after loss. Like you did after Eleanor. He froze, teacup midway to his lips. She sees my scars, but not the fresh wounds she unwittingly inflicts. Resilience, he said slowly, is often invisible. It's the quiet choice to rise each day, to find beauty in the mundane. Clara nodded, sketching furiously. You're so wise. I envy that peace you have. Peace. Harold nearly laughed. His mind was a tempest of whats. What if I told her? What if she felt even a fraction? But he knew better. At 67. He understood the grace in restraint. Love, unrequited, was still love, a testament to the heart's capacity, undimmed by time. That night, alone, he penned a letter he would never send. Dearest Clara, it began. In the library of my life, you are the illuminated manuscript, vibrant, alive, unattainable. I watch you paint the world anew, and in your light I find echoes of youth. But I am content in shadows, cherishing what is, not what could be. He sealed it in a drawer, a relic of his hidden world. A small event shifted something within him the following week. Clara invited him to an art show in town, her works on display. As they wandered the gallery, she linked her arm in his for warmth. Thanks for coming, mentor, she teased. In that touch, innocent and fleeting, Harold felt a bittersweet warmth. This is enough, he thought. To be near, to witness her joy. Loneliness lingered, but so did dignity. The quiet resilience of a man who had loved, lost, and dared to feel again. Chapter 4. Tides of Acceptance. Spring arrived tentatively, with buds unfurling and the sea calming to a gentle murmur. Harold turned 68, marking the day with a solitary walk. Clara surprised him with a painting. A serene coastal scene inscribed to Harold, my anchor in the storm. Tears pricked his eyes as he hung it above his mantel. Anchor, he mused. Not the sail, not the wind, but steady, reliable. Acceptance washed over him like the tide, cleansing the ache. Aging brought clarity. Love need not be mutual to heal. In Clara's friendship, he found new meaning, a bridge from past to present, laced with hidden hope. As summer approached, Harold began writing, not grand tales but reflections on life by the sea. He shared snippets with Clara, who encouraged him with her infectious enthusiasm. In those exchanges, his unrequited love transformed into something wiser, more profound, a quiet celebration of the heart's enduring rhythm. And so, in Eldridge Bay, where waves whispered eternal stories, Harold Finley embraced the bittersweet symphony of his days. Melancholy softened by wisdom, loneliness tempered by hope. Chapter 5. The Weight of Unspoken Words. Summer draped Eldridge Bay in a golden haze, the kind that softened the edges of the world and made even the ordinary seem luminous. Harold's days settled into a gentle rhythm. Mornings spent tending his garden, afternoons reading or writing in his notebook, and evenings watching the sunset paint the sky in hues Clara might capture on canvas. His reflections, once mere musings, had grown into a collection of vignettes, snapshots of life in the coastal town, infused with the quiet wisdom of his years. He titled them Tides of Memory, a nod to the ebb and flow of his emotions. Clara remained a constant presence, her laughter spilling over the low stone wall that separated their cottages. She would call out to him from her porch, paint smudged on her cheek, inviting him to critique her latest work or share a glass of iced tea. These moments were treasures, small but heavy with meaning, yet they carried a sting. Each smile she offered, each casual touch on his arm, deepened the ache of his unrequited love. How does one hold such a feeling? He wondered in the solitude of his study. Like a book too fragile to open, too precious to shelve. One humid afternoon, Clara appeared at his door, her eyes alight with a new idea. "Harold, I'm hosting a community art night," she announced, her hands gesturing wildly. "People can share anything, paintings, poems, stories. You have to read something from your notebook, please." He hesitated, his heart a tangle of nerves and longing. To share his writing would be to bare a piece of his soul, and the thought of Clara hearing his words shaped by his silent devotion to her, felt perilous. Yet her enthusiasm was infectious, and he found himself nodding. "I'll think about it," he said, his voice softer than he intended. That night, alone with his thoughts, Harold opened his drawer and retrieved the unsent letter to Clara. He read it again, tracing the ink that held his truth. "I am content in shadows," he had written, but was he? The act of writing had become a lifeline, a way to process the loneliness that clung to him like damp sea air. Perhaps sharing a story, even one veiled in metaphor, could be a step toward something new. Not Clara's love, but a kind of peace. Chapter 6. The Art of Being Seen. The community art night arrived on a balmy evening in late July, held in the town hall, a weathered building overlooking the harbor. Fairy lights twinkled above mismatched tables, where locals displayed sketches, quilts, and handwritten poems. Clara buzzed through the crowd, her vibrant energy drawing smiles and chatter. Harold sat near the back, his notebook clutched in his hands, feeling both invisible and exposed. When Clara called his name, urging him to the makeshift stage, his knees trembled. He stood, smoothing his worn cardigan, and faced the small audience. Neighbors, fishermen, shopkeepers, and Clara, her eyes bright with encouragement. He cleared his throat and read a piece titled "The Lighthouse Keeper." In a town where the sea sang lullabies, there lived a keeper of light. His beacon burned not for ships, but for a single soul who never saw its glow. Each night, he polished the lens, knowing the light would guide others but never her. Yet he persisted, for the act of shining was enough, proof that his heart still beat, that his days held purpose. His voice wavered but held, and when he finished, the room erupted in soft applause. Clara rushed to him, her hands clasped. "Harold, that was beautiful. So poignant. You have to publish these." He smiled, his chest tight. She heard the words, but not their meaning. The story was his confession, cloaked in fiction, a lighthouse beam cast toward her oblivious heart. Yet the act of sharing it, of being seen even in part, lifted a weight he hadn't realized he carried. This is resilience, he thought. To speak, to feel, to endure. Later, as they walked home under a sky strewn with stars, Clara looped her arm through his. "I'm so proud of you, Harold. You're like this town's quiet hero. He chuckled, the sound masking a pang. Hero or fool, it matters little. I am here, and that is enough. Chapter 7. The Turning Tide. As summer faded into autumn, Harold's writing took on new life. Encouraged by Clara and the community's response, he began submitting his vignettes to small literary journals. To his surprise, one accepted a piece, printing it in their winter issue. The day the journal arrived in the mail, Clara insisted on celebrating with a homemade cake. Her kitchen a chaos of flour and laughter. "You're a published author now, Harold," she exclaimed, raising a glass of sparkling cider. "To new beginnings." He toasted with her, but his thoughts drifted inward. New beginnings at 68. Not what I imagined, yet here they are. His love for Clara remained a quiet tide, ever present but no longer threatening to drown him. He had found a way to channel it, through words, through small acts of connection, through the dignity of acceptance. One crisp October evening, as they sat on his porch watching the sunset, Clara spoke of her own dreams. "I'm thinking of traveling next year," she said, her voice wistful. "Maybe Italy to paint the coastlines there. What about you, Harold? Any big plans?" He considered the question, his gaze on the horizon where sea met sky. "To love you silently, to write my truths, to live with grace. I'll keep writing," he said simply. "And tending my garden. The roses need me." She laughed, leaning her head against his shoulder, a fleeting gesture that warmed him through. In that moment, he felt the bittersweet truth of his existence. Love unreturned was still love, a force that shaped him without consuming him. Aging had stripped away illusions but gifted him clarity. Loneliness lingered, but so did hope, hidden in the small joys of a life quietly lived. Chapter 8. The Eternal Shore. By winter, Harold's cottage had become a haven for his writing, its walls bearing witness to his evolution. Clara prepared for her trip, her cottage a flurry of packing and plans. She left him a parting gift, a small painting of a lighthouse, its beam cutting through a stormy night. "For my favorite keeper of stories," she wrote on the back. As he hung it beside her earlier gift, Harold felt a stillness settle over him. "This is my meaning," he thought. "Not in her love but in mine. In the stories I tell, the moments we share, the life I've rebuilt." He continued writing, his pen tracing the contours of a heart that had learned to hold both loss and longing with grace. On a snowy evening, as the sea whispered beyond his window, Harold opened his notebook and began a new story. It was about a man who loved the tide, not for what it brought, but for its ceaseless rhythm, its promise of renewal. And in those words, Harold found his own renewal, a quiet resilience that carried him forward, toward a horizon laced with hidden hope.